Yeah.
Speaking of seasons and timing and whatnot, it is definitely time to get started. So let's go ahead and do that. So welcome, everybody. Thank you for showing up on time. We really appreciate it. Hi, Rabea. Today, our purpose is, again, we're here. We're 90 minutes like normal. So if this is your first time with us, that's the scoop. Our sessions are, in fact, recorded. They're experimental. And our purpose today is to experiment with the intentional use of productive multitasking. Like what? But that's what we're going to do. So our game leader, our experimental design guru today is Viren Thakrar. He is marked with the fabulous facilitator's crystal ball of somehow supposedly knowing how this is all going to work. And I will be your tech host. My name's Elise Keith. So if you run into any challenges, you are welcome to hit me up in the chat. And then one thing that happens, because these sessions are 90 minutes long, we find that people sometimes need to leave it around the hour. And yet, because they are experimental, our goal is to play and to learn. So I'm going to ask you right now to go ahead and open up the feedback form. So there's a link in the chat. Open it now. Don't give us feedback yet. That's too soon. But have it ready so that when you have to go, you're all ready to turn it over and let us know. What did you learn? What did you think? What will you do with what happened here today? And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Viren. Viren, thank you so much for agreeing to tackle this with us.
Liz, thank you so much for welcoming me to your community. Awesome to see all of you. I'm based in, today it is sunny but slightly cold Melbourne, all the way over in Australia. And I really appreciate you all opening up your precious time to explore this concept of multitasking. So I'm pretty excited to run a bit of an experimental session today. So my name is Viren. I'm co-founder of a business called In The Game. So I mainly work with small to medium growing businesses all around people and culture. And as we all probably know, this meetings is a core part of building culture. How a business runs meetings, what their meeting philosophy is one of the big drivers of how the culture is shaped. And so obviously spend a lot of time working together with businesses on this concept of collaboration, meetings, and all that type of thing. My whole background is from the world of psychology, but I decided to start a business 3.5 years ago, combining together my love of psychology and also my love of games as well. I'm an avid video game and board game player. And just through my career, for a 15-16 year career, I've just found bringing games and bringing fun to things makes things better. And that's just my worldview. Many of you may think, not so sure, but my worldview is let's bring fun, experimentation and play more to the workplace. And I believe by doing that, we end up with a better world. So today's session, what we're going to be doing is, we'll just share my screen, is exploring this concept of the multitasking myth. And if I'm perfectly honest with you, I haven't really landed on a solid conclusion as to whether we should or shouldn't multitask in meetings, whether it's good or bad. I've got some feelings, but I'd love to explore this question with you. I think the common advice is, no multitasking, don't check phones, everything's off. When you're in a meeting, you're in the meeting, and that's what we should do, and that's better practice. And I'd love to explore this concept more. Is this actually true? Or are there actually exceptions to this common advice? But what I'd like to do to start with is, before we get into the experimental side of things, is just, I'm sure you've all got a view on this, like I've got a view on this, like Elisa's got a view. I'm sure you've all got a view on this particular question. So what I'm going to get you to do as a start is we're going to pop you into breakout rooms for 3 minutes. You're just going to introduce yourselves and just share your initial feelings on this hypothesis that all multitasking in meetings is bad. Now, the groups I'm going to put you in for the introductions, the small groups, you're going to be working with that group to then explore this question further throughout the session. So this is just your way to get to know your group before we kind of go into the little experiments. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I just saw Nan's message, screen off is finishing dinner. Is that, I think that's good multitasking personally. That's my view. Yeah, feeding your energy reserves so you can focus on the meeting. So thanks for sharing, Nan. So I'm just going to quickly, if you give me a moment, just set up the breakout rooms and I'll pop it into groups of 3. All right, so I'll just give you 3 minutes to start. and then you'll get a little timer just letting you know you've got 30 seconds to wrap up your conversation, and then we'll come back here and then we'll get into the crux of the session. We'll just initially explore this hypothesis. What's your view? Is all multitasking in meetings bad? See you all in 3 minutes time. Welcome back, everyone. So got everyone dropping back in. Great to see you all. Awesome. So you've initially started exploring this question, and I guess this is what we're going to do for the rest of the session, is actually dive deeper into this question and hypothesis and really explore it through a little bit of experimentation. And just to give you a backstory on why we ended up running this. So I was very fortunate to have Elise at one of my sessions where I was just experimenting with this concept of playing. As I say, I love games and I love poker. And I was like, I have awesome conversations with my friends when I'm playing poker. And I thought, why don't we just try this concept of playing a game and having a conversation and just seeing what type of conversation we have when we're playing games in a more professional context. And it was a really, really fun, similar 90-minute session. Elise was there, had a great time. And I caught up with Elise afterwards to unpack some of the insights and reflections. And one of the things we got onto the topic of was multitasking. Because obviously when you're playing a game and you're talking, you know, there's a fair amount of multitasking going on. And we're like, well, what was good about that and what was bad about that? And we got into a really interesting conversation, talking about some of the variables. And then the light bulb moment is, why don't we try something out? You know, you've got an awesome community here, Meeting Innovation Company. We are all about innovation and trying new and different things, the Meeting Innovation community, sorry. So why not come and try something experimental here? And that's why we're here today. We're kind of really diving deep into this concept of multitasking and really trying to answer this question: is all multitasking meetings really bad? Now, there's a couple of lenses I think I'm interested in exploring this with. So it's going to be quite an experimental session, but I'm interested in exploring this topic of multitasking from 3 different hats. So when we're going through this and when we're doing the reflection, we're going to focus on 3 areas, and we're going to focus on 4 different types of multitasking. But really, one of the things I'm interested in exploring further with you all is, we have multitasking in meetings. What impact does that have on these 3 parts? What impact does that have on the speaker? So that at the time, if someone's speaking and people are multitasking, what impact does that have on them? What impact does it have on people when they're not speaking and we're engaging in multitasking? And ultimately, what impact does it have on the objectives of the meeting? And what we might find, we're playing around with 4 different conditions, is some conditions might have a, you know, good impact on the speaker, poor impact on the non-speaker, and a good impact on the objective. Well, we can unpack that a little bit more, or we might find it plays out in slightly different ways. So we're going to be going quite deep into this question, and I'm really interested to see where we end up and what kind of conclusions we can draw by the end. Now, as I say, it's going to be experimental. So you're going to be in your groups. We're going to make this a little bit playful, try and have a little bit of fun with it. But it literally is, we have, in the spirit of science, we're going to have 4 experimental conditions. We're going to try things out. We're going to capture some data, and then hopefully we've got some time at the end to reflect on the data and go, what are some of the conclusions we're going to draw about this question around multitasking? So the specific, some of the specifics, you're going to be in your groups and you've had a chance to introduce yourselves. I'm going to put you in the position of you're a fictitious startup advisory board. So the group you're in, room 1, you're one advisory board, room 2, you're another advisory board. So you're basically, your role is you're working with a bunch of startups and you advise these startups on a number of different things. In this particular instance, what you're going to be doing is 4 startups have come to you and they've said, hey, we'd love your expert advice on reviewing our landing pages. Now, it doesn't matter if you're an expert on landing pages or you have no idea what a landing page is. It doesn't matter at all. All you really be required to do is review a few landing pages and share your perspectives on what you like, what you don't like, and what you think they might be able to do better. And you can do that from the view of, if you are a marketing expert, you can do it from the view of your marketing expertise. If you're a general consumer, you can do it from the point of view of, I'm just using this website for the first time. What do I think? With the landing page, all you're going to be doing really is just focusing on one main page. So you'll be just presenting one main page. The beauty of landing pages is they tend to be quite high level, quite light. So it's not super dense. You should be able to scroll through it and get a feel for what the landing page is about and be able to provide your input and insights. So that's the premise. You're a startup advisory board in your groups. You've got 4 startups that have come to you to review 4 different landing pages. The kicker here is we're going to do it 4 times, but each particular landing page you review, you're going to be under a different experimental condition. So we're going to actually play around with this concept of multitasking. So in some conditions, we'll be doing minimal multitasking, and in others, we'll be doing quite a lot of multitasking. And we're just going to play around with this spectrum, 4 different conditions, and just see how it goes and see what kind of impact it has when you're speaking, when you're not speaking, what impact does it have on the overall outcome. So I'll pause there for a second, and I'll go into a little bit more detail in just a second, but how does that sound at a high level? Any kind of immediate questions around what we're doing today and how we're going to go about exploring this question? Awesome. Great. And it looks like we've got a fellow Melburnian joining us. That's exciting. I'll just wait for Lani to come in. Hey, Lani, how you doing? A fellow Melburnian, it's awesome to see you. Just to quickly catch you up, we're basically exploring this concept of multitasking and whether it is all bad. And we're going to be doing that through a little bit of playful experimentation. So you're going to be put into a group of 4 people, and your group is a fictitious startup advisory board. And you're going to be basically giving 4 startups feedback on their landing pages. And you're going to go through quite a structured process. I'll talk that process through in a little bit of detail in just a second. But essentially, the startups want feedback on their landing pages, and you're going to work together with your groups to give them that feedback or collate that feedback. But we're going to play around with some experimental conditions about how you go about having those conversations. So I hope at a top level that, yeah, great. So the way it will work in terms of the specifics, I'll give you the instructions. You'll have just 1 minute by yourself to orientate yourself around the landing page. So clicking on the link, opening it up in the browser, and just getting a quick sense of what is this page about. And then I'm just going to pop you into your breakout rooms for 10 minutes with your group. But I'm going to give you some specific instructions around what you are or aren't allowed to do when it comes to multitasking. Once you've had your 10 minutes, as I say, be playful with it, have a little bit of fun with it. And then you'll come back and I'll give you 3 minutes to just capture some of your reflections on a simple little online post-it note application. You'll do that individually. We'll do that 4 times. And then we'll come back and review the data and have a bit of a group discussion. All right, just to check in there, how does that all sound? Any kind of immediate questions at this stage? Great.
I'm gonna let this late person in, and they're gonna have to swim with where we are. They're gonna have to figure it out because they're late. So it's okay.
They'll be with a group. So
yep.
Okay, so let's get into experiment condition A. And experiment condition A, and I'll copy and paste this into the chat panel so you've also got it there. So you're going to be reviewing a landing page for a startup called Curology. And what you're going to be doing is really as I said, identify strengths and weaknesses of the landing page, or what you like or dislike about the landing page, and any kind of specific advice you might give to the startup founders about changes they need to make. I'm going to give you 1 minute just to review that page individually. Once the minute's up, you'll be into your breakout rooms and you'll start having a conversation. Now, the condition in this is a classic non-multitasking condition. When you're not speaking, you're paying full attention to the person that is saying something. I don't really mind how you spend the 10 minutes, how you decide to approach it, or leave that. You're expert advisors. You've done these things many times before. So I'll let you go with the flow in terms of that. But the only condition is this is a non-multitasking condition. You're literally, when someone's talking, they've got your full attention. And when you're speaking, you've got their full attention. So I'll just copy and paste those instructions into the chat. Just give me a moment to do that. All right, the instructions are in the chat. I'll get you to all to click on the link in the chat to the Curology website. And then I'll start the minute timer. Now this will be your final part to have questions before we kind of throw you out into breakout rooms. Are there any questions or things you're not sure about? Amazing. Right, I'll start the 1 minute timer. Orient yourselves around the Curology website. And then as soon as that minute's up, you'll see you'll be in breakout rooms for 10 minutes. All right, that's your minute up. I'll see you all now in 10 minutes time. Good luck discussing the first landing page under non-multitasking conditions. See you all soon.
Welcome back.
Welcome back, everyone. So that was experiment number 1, a classic non-multitasking condition. Hope you had a good conversation about this business's landing page. Some of you may even feel compelled to email them. Go, hey, we've had a conversation about your landing page. We've got some ideas. But what I'd like to do for 3 minutes in the chat panel, I'm popping in a link to a very simple little post-it note application. So I'm hoping you can all open that up. And I want you to reflect. You'll get 3 minutes in just a moment to reflect on the experience that you just had. And you've got 3 questions there. And really, essentially, the 3 questions are looking at: how did it feel when you were speaking? How did it feel as a non-speaker when you weren't speaking? And what do you think in terms of the quality of outcome for that little 10-minute segment you just had? What I'd love you to do is, for each, put a note in each one. You've got 3 minutes. It's going to have to be pretty brief, the note. But what I'd like you to start each note with a score on a scale of 1 to 10. Just on a scale of 1 to 10, doesn't have to be super accurate. What was your feeling in terms of how well it landed for when you were speaking, when you were just a participant, and for the outcome of the meeting? So give it a 1 to 10 score and just write a little comment. The applications, you just need to press the little plus button to pop down a post-it note. And when you put a comment down, it's totally anonymous. I don't know who's written what. It would be great if you could get a post-it note down on each segment. So I'll give you 3 minutes. Just give me a shout if you can't access it or you're having issues. And we'll see if we can resolve it. Sometimes if it doesn't load the first time around, if you refresh it, it'll load again. But I can see some notes coming down already. That's great. So any issues? Is it
1 low and 10 high? 10's awesome.
Yeah, 1 low and 10 high. Good point of clarification. So a score and a little note around why you gave that score.
Oh, I like how they're different colors. That's cool.
Yeah. All right. There's a good selection of comments there. If you could just, little timer's just gone off. So if you're on a post-it note, I'll just give you a second just to finish that one off and pop it in. Great. Now we'll move on to experimental condition number 2. So this condition will be a different site. So again, like before, I'll give you a minute just to orient yourselves around the site, and I'll copy and paste the instructions in just a second. Exact same process. You're doing exactly the same thing in terms of what you're focusing in on, strengths, weaknesses, potential changes. But this is the classic multitasking condition. So this is the one you get where, whilst people are talking, people are attending to emails, they're responding to some instant messages on Slack, Teams, or their communication channel of preference. So what I want you to do is, when you're not speaking, and you're going to play a little bit of a menace. So have a little bit of fun with this. So imagine you're someone that just you're not super interested in what the speaker's got to say, and attend to some real tasks that you've got. So if you've got some emails to get back to, consider this 10 minutes as an opportunity to draft some emails up, reply to some messages, and again, let's have a little bit of fun with this condition. And this one we see, it's not uncommon. We're in a meeting and you've got a few people, they're dealing with an urgent task or an issue that's come up, and they're half listening, half emailing. That's exactly what you're going to be doing here. So whilst you're the startup advisory board, you've got other fires to fight. Someone needs some funding, someone's had a major staffing issue, and you're kind of half in this meeting and half attending to your emails and messages. So in the chat panel, I will pop in the instructions for this one. I'll just give you a moment to open up that link. I'll start the minute timer now, so that you can start reflecting individually, and then we'll pop you into your breakout rooms. All right, that's the minute up. So pop you into your breakout rooms. Have your emails open to the side. Have your instant messages open to the side. Get all those usual distractions there. Probably the first time you're going to be instructed to do these things while you're meeting, so make the most of it. And I'll see you all in 10 minutes time. That's time. I'll give you a minute just to capture any last responses. So I'm just looking over them. Super interesting. Now this is some really insightful, interesting comments there, in contrast to the first condition as well. So I look forward to discussing some of these with you later. All right, we're going to move into the next condition, experiment C. So you've got a different page here, and this time, as I say, most of the things are the same as before. The difference here is you can multitask, but what I'm going to get you to do is get a piece of paper and a pen. So I'll give you a moment to grab that. And whilst the person's talking, you can doodle, sketch, and draw as with freedom. So some of you may find you're just going to doodle, sketch, and draw like faces and other flowers and sunshine and things like that. Some of you may find you start synthesizing, drawing, and sketching around what people are talking about. I'm not going to give you too much specificity around what you're allowed to doodle, draw, and sketch, but I do want you to grab a piece of paper, grab a pen, and when you're not speaking, make a conscious effort to use your pen and paper and do something with it. And as I say, I'm not going to be too prescriptive around what that looks like. I'm going to kind of call this condition passive multitasking. We're doing it. Our pen's going to be in our hand, but we're going to be relatively engaged with the speaker. Just quick check to any questions. Awesome. So what I'll do is I'll pop the instructions into the chat panel. I'll give you a minute just to open up the landing page for EduPath. Open it up. Give you a minute to have a look through it, and I will pop you out into your breakout rooms again.
We're on to experiment 3. Are you ready to dive into experiment 3, or would you like to hold back and hear what we've done while everybody else goes off?
Yeah, I'll listen.
Okay.
All right, that's the minute up. So have your pen and paper ready, get your doodle fingers on, and we will see you in 10 minutes time to unpack experiment number 3. Welcome back, everyone. Hope you've got some nice doodles and sketches.
I bet Chris does. Chris, what did you draw?
You've thrown Chris in it.
Well, Chris draws for a living.
Oh, there you go.
But I suck at drawing.
No.
Yes, perfect.
There you go. There's my little guy. And
amazing. Oh,
Nice.
great. Loving seeing the doodles. It's awesome. All right. So what we'll get to do, similar to before, just a different space in the chat panel. Click on the link and reflect on that experience. It's like before, you'll get 3 minutes. And so I'll call this condition passive multitasking. Probably not. I wasn't quite set on that term, but that's what it's called for now. What was your experience of that condition? So I'll start the 3-minute timer. Awesome. So I'll get you to pop down your final comments, and we'll move on to the final experiment. Okay, so this is the final condition. So exactly the same as before. You're reviewing the Code Academy website, but this time it's going to be active multitasking. So when you're not speaking, I think this kind of started to creep into condition number 2. You're looking at relevant information. So this might be competitor websites. It might be other things that are useful, might be other statistics. So when the person's speaking, they're speaking. When you're not speaking, you're actively using your time to find other supporting information from other websites and other sources. So I'll copy and paste that into the chat panel. I call this one, I think I've called it active multitasking. So I'll give you a minute to get familiar with that website, and then we'll pop you into your breakout rooms. Awesome. That's the timer. If you popped into your breakout rooms 10 minutes, happy active multitasking and reviewing, and I'll see you all in 10 minutes time. Welcome back,
A little
everyone.
shorter so we can get through the wrap up.
Yeah. What we will do is give you a chance to individually reflect. So just, mindful you had a little bit less time, but hopefully you got a feel of that condition and pros and cons. So I've just popped the link into the chat panel. So I'll get you to pop down 3 minutes, pop down your thoughts, and then we'll do a reflection on all the different conditions and what your key takeaways are from that and going through that. Amazing. And if you're still capturing some thoughts, that's totally fine. Firstly, thanks so much for playing and experimenting together with us. So I hope you found just exploring some of the edges of multitasking, those different conditions, interesting. So I guess the reflection question from me to you is, we started off with this premise: is all multitasking bad? And I would love to hear, now you've gone through 4 conditions, what your feeling is and what your insights and reflections were from that experience. Now, Elise and myself are happy to kind of, we've obviously got 3 minutes left until the official end time. I'm happy to stay around for those that want to stay around. But if you do need to leave at 11:30, that's cool. But if anyone is pressing for time and wants to get some insights out first, it'd be great to kick off with you. So is anyone that's kind of pressed for time that would like to kick us off with insights and reflections? And I guess the question is all multitasking bad? And what is our feeling on that question?
I can kick off because I've got a hard stop. So I thought it was really surprising in which conditions I was able to hold the conversation and which conditions I wasn't. So as an example, when you explicitly said don't multitask, I didn't.
Yeah.
I really didn't. I listened to the conversation and I flow. When you said multitask a bit later and draw something, I struggled completely. And in other situations, I will doodle when people are talking. And I couldn't do that this time. And then the final experiment, I really struggled with the conversation flow. It felt like no one was listening. So that was my experience.
Amazing. And is there, just from that experience, is there anything you might look to do differently going forward with respect to, as a facilitator of meetings, looking at how you set up multitasking or how you are as a participant? Is there anything you kind of go, this is something I might do differently now?
Yeah, I think I need to reflect a bit more on it, but definitely feel like it will influence how I progress with things going forward, especially in a virtual environment. So yes, I do think, I'm not sure what I will do differently, but I want to reflect on this more because it was very interesting.
Yeah, super, Lani. Thanks for kicking us off. Thanks for sharing. I agree. There's some big surprises for me in there because I had some hypotheses myself. And there's a lot there. There's actually, I may be off base. So love to hear when you've had a chance to process what that looks like. But thanks so much for kicking us off.
And then, because you have to go, Lani, make sure you've opened up the feedback form so that you can catch that. Thank you. And as same for everybody too. Fascinating.
Amazing, Lani. Thank you. Who'd like to go next to share some of their insights and reflections, especially for those of you that might have to duck off very soon or at 11:30?
Well, I was just going to say, I agree with what she said. I'm still not really sure because the reality is people are going to multitask.
Yeah.
But giving them permission, do we give them permission? Because it doesn't matter what we tell them they can do. They're just going to do what they're going to do. So, I don't know, because people are just going to do what they are going to do. So we don't have really any control over that, do we?
Well, okay, this question for you then is, what do you think giving permission does to the dynamics and the energy and the group setting? What do you think giving permission does differently to not doing it explicitly?
Or withholding permission, conversely. Don't multitask. You need to stay focused, Yeah.
No, that's a good point, because actually on the last activity, when we gave permission to look at other sites, I personally felt I was more engaged because I wanted to do a comparative analysis. So for me, it was like, I was more engaged when I'm like, go ahead and find other sites that, you want to compare. So from that perspective, giving them the permission to engage at a deeper level.
As the speaker in that one, what my feeling was that we accelerated the input of other information into the process, and it turned from a presentation to a group collaboration very quickly.
And so that was different to the other conditions for you then?
It was for me. Now that I've grabbed the mic from Nan, sorry, Nan. But yeah, when we were the one we were told to doodle was the worst one for me, because I was operating solo as opposed to being in the group. Even the one where we multitasked onto other media, I felt like I was still in an electronic medium, listening to electronic mediated conversation. And was able to switch back into electronic mode. But when I was in my doodle mode, my brain kind of went there, and I missed fairly large gaps in what was being said.
Yeah, interesting. You kind of complete mode switch, so you're not on the device that you're engaging with others on. And
that was for me. That's what I experienced. Mm-hmm.
Really interesting. Thanks, Nan, and thanks, John, for that. I think it's this piece. It sounds like there's a little bit here around individual variation as well. Like there's a little bit about what individual preferences are. So interesting. Again, if we dictate one thing for the whole group, how much do we wash away individual preference? That's something that's cropping up for me based on your reflections. anyone else like to kind of chip in with kind of their experience there, any insights they've had about that multitasking? Even if, you all went in with a hypothesis at the beginning and you've got your views now, are they the same? Or has anyone kind of changed their mind?
I definitely went in thinking that multitasking was bad.
Yeah.
That like you can't literally do that. Like your brain cannot focus on two things at once. And so I think it's like the flavor of multitasking. Like if you're kind of mindlessly doing something, I mean, when I have a meeting, I like to take notes and just like write things down. And I think that I write things that I think are interesting or important. And I think that helps cement them. And it might also mean that I'm not listening to the next person that person is saying or what I'm learning. So I think it would be multitasking, but I kind of agree with John in a way, like I need to be doing something with my hands.
Yeah.
And I think multitasking does allow for that. It just needs to be aligned with whatever you're talking about.
Yeah. So it's got to be the right thing that you're multitasking on. So it's not taking attention away too much, but it's actually helping you tune in and focus.
Right. Like the second it becomes email or social media or Reddit, or that's like not the good multitasking.
No, Reddit's the biggest hole on the internet.
I know, man. Tell me about it.
Awesome, Chris. I like that reflection. Again, not all multitasking is equal. Maybe some are helping us better at helping us tune in. Others are less effective at that. Thanks, Chris.
I got to add an addendum to mine real quickly that I think that if I had turned off my cameras, my multitasking experience would have been worse. But a camera made me feel like I needed to at least try to pay attention and be present.
Yeah, very interesting, John. And I know Elisa's run some sessions around these cameras on, cameras off. And that's an interesting variable to put into the mix as well is, sometimes people do have to have cameras off for valid reasons. But then if you have your camera off and all of a sudden you open up Reddit or you open up your emails and then you've actually disconnected from the group and that camera's off is, makes it difficult then to reconnect back in and contribute. It's great. Thanks,
I'd be
John.
curious to hear some reflections from the other group because most of you were together.
Well, I like the idea that you had several different ways, and the first one was to focus, and then the others were to multitask, and that if you gave, as a presenter, that if you gave the group these different options as you went along so they could compare it for themselves, it makes variety and interest in the way that you run the meeting. So I like that you did that.
Great, Christina. I like this part you mentioned, it just explicitly spelling it out with the group and actually going, hey, you've got options here. Like you're, I think when we were talking between sessions with Elise, you're all adults. So if we give you the options, we say, look, this is you create your own menu and you cater your own experience. How does that play out? It's a nice reflection there, Christina. Thank you. Anyone else from room 2?
Also, I'd like to say that my group, when we were looking up the other websites related to the topic, that it felt more collaborative rather than distracting and multitasking, and I thought it added. So
yeah, I think John was mentioning something there about it kind of accelerated the information input, the collaboration. And I think some people that had an interesting experience where I think they felt the conversation then went off onto another tangent. So it became less focused on the objective itself. So whilst it maybe, and I think this is where it's interesting teasing out the differences in experience between the speaker, the attendees, and then the ultimate, what was the impact on the outcome of the meeting. So it might have felt like I'm not saying this is the case, but it might have felt like a nice collaborative conversation. We got to talk about lots of interesting things, but did it detract from the outcome that we were setting out to, or did it help? And I think they're useful questions to consider. Thanks, Christina.
I'm not sure if this is going to make sense, but I'm just sort of thinking, when you're the speaker, the perception of what people are doing.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm constantly taking notes, but somebody may be looking at me thinking, oh, well, she's not engaged. And then that just changes a dynamic.
Yeah.
So I think we have to be cognizant that what multitasking is for one person isn't for another, or, like somebody else mentioned, they become more focused if they're doing something else. But it's that perception. And when you start, like our meetings, when we have our full team, it's 30 odd people. We have some people who are completely straight at the computer, but they may not even be fully engaged. They could be dreaming about going to the beach but it's just, and I remember a few months ago, I actually had somebody message me on our email and said, "Are you asleep?" And I'm like, "What?" I take notes, so my head is down.
Yeah.
So I think we have to be careful of that as well, the perception of what multitasking is, if that makes sense. I know I babbled, but.
Oh, no, honestly, absolutely. It makes sense. It reminds me of one of my favorite stories early on in my facilitation career. I had this workshop. I thought it was an amazing workshop because everyone was just thinking, and there was one person at the back, and I was like, this person's had an awful experience. This was in person. So I managed to grab them at the end and go, hey, and they're like, that's the most thought-provoking session I've been. I was just thinking about all these things that people were saying. And it was just such an aha moment for me. Is like this exact perception. My perception as a speaker was this person's not engaged, but actually super engaged, and they're just processing it in a different way. And I think sometimes we can color our experience of a session or a meeting based on our experience and perception as the speaker, and it's not always true. So I think I made great sense to me, Cream, this point.
I think we have to think of neurodiversity as well. We all think differently. We all take information in differently.
Yeah. That's great. And can I just ask you a follow-up? What does that mean for how we can set these things up differently going forward? So if we kind of accept that, look, people do process things differently. What are some of the things we could do, up front to kind of normalize that, do you think?
Well, I know we've had conversations in our work. We're just developing our DEI program, and one of the things that we do talk about a lot is neurodiversity, and that we all learn, think, process differently, and that's okay. I think we have a unique environment. We're very accepting, but we do have those conversations, and it's okay to be who you are. However, that being said, if you're doing something that's obvious, or you accidentally share your screen on your Facebook, there's going to be a conversation, but you're allowed to be who you are.
Yeah, I like it. So it sounds like that's part of the culture. You're kind of having these conversations frequently about this is important.
Absolutely.
Being yourself, who you are is important. I like that you say though, if it goes too far, there's a conversation there. We just have a chat.
A conversation.
Yeah, love it.
I think it's a great role for facilitators, right? As to set that stage, hey, if you need to XYZ, no problem, just let us know. Because the challenge with assumptions is that assumptions get us into all kinds of trouble. I assume if you're looking down, you're sleeping. But sometimes they're correct, right? Like I assume if somebody doesn't reply to me for 3 days, they're not actually working. Sometimes that's true. So the way to get around assumptions is to have honest conversations.
Yeah,
and it sounds so great that you're in a place to be that. Speaking of honest conversations, we have more coming up. So I want to pop the last reminder in the chat. Viren, this has been a fascinating experiment. Like when we scheduled it, we were talking about things like walking meetings, or like when you talk with teenagers and you're driving, they'll actually talk to you because you're not looking at them. Right? Like, so there are things where when we're doing together, cooking, certain kinds of conversations become possible when we don't have to look at each other all the time. So where in the work world is that useful? And this experiment's given us some ways to play with that. So thank you so much.
Oh, no, thank you so much for creating the space, bringing the people together and allowing me into your community to play around a little bit with this concept. I've loved it. I can't wait to just dig into the post-it notes and the reflections as well, because there's some gold in there.
And speaking of which, the edited recording, the post-it notes, hopefully, yes, and the slides. Can we share all of those in the recording?
Yes.
Awesome. So that'll come out in the next several days. And then going forward, there's an event scheduled on the 31st, which is in an APAC friendly time zone, but I think it's an error. But like Jack, the party scientist, is like totally a wild card. So I'm not entirely sure. I mean, it's for me, it's like at 9 p.m. at night. So maybe that is in fact when we're supposed to have that event. I don't know. But so if you RSVP and it turns out not to be in your time zone, I apologize. We'll find out soon. The other one that I know is APAC friendly for those of you who are in that area is on April 12th. We'll be doing how to frame problems visually with Ben Carruthers. He's a relatively accomplished visual facilitator, wrote a book, all kinds of things. We'll be doing that work then. And the full schedule is in the chat. So thank you all so very much for joining us for this. Really appreciated it.
Thank you. Great to meet you all.
Thank you, Viren.